All right. Well, thanks for doing the little chat here. This is the first one, so the fact that we're talking to you, you have to be number one or number two in terms of OPO members. So you've been
Yeah,
here,
I think,
you've been part of OPO before OPO was OPO.
yeah, it was past the idea stage, but it was prior to you starting renovations. So
What of the post office building? Yeah,
yes,
right. Yeah. Hey, so as I said, 5 years tomorrow. We're doing this one on May the 4th. And normally we have the big party and we have showcase for members or whatever. And so we thought, well, this year with the pandemic situation, that we would try to sit down with several of the members of OPO, the entrepreneurs or the founders of their companies, and China. Kind of get some a little chat going. We kind of do these things informally. I see you guys from time to time walking through the building, and we chat and get kind of caught up. And
yep,
things have changed a lot for you. So I thought let's start by first of all, let's let everybody know who you are, Jeff Dinter. I don't know what your title. You're an entrepreneur. You're kind of in between things right now because you just exited. You had, was it Embassy and then TenantLoop that then got bought by Buildium, that then got bought by RealPage,
yeah,
and you have since exited out of that and you're getting ready to do a new venture. So I don't know if you want to talk
yeah.
about where to start, but I have some basic questions on that, and so maybe
Yeah, I mean
we
that's
can
yeah,
start there, huh?
yeah, yeah. It sounds good. And yeah, Jeff Dinter is the name. I'm from St. Louis, born and raised, and love the Midwest, and just love everything about it. And title wise, yeah, serial entrepreneur for better or worse. Since I was 18, I've owned different businesses and kind of grinded away in a few different niches. But I've been in tech for the past um, 10 or 12 years, and yeah, I come from a design and product background, which was Embassy, which was the company I owned when I joined OPO. Um,
Right, right.
and that was mainly working with early stage startups on their products. And then yeah, eventually I switched over to building my own product, which I think we can get into, which was called
Yeah.
TenantLoop. And yeah,
Yeah. So where did the idea come about for TenantLoop? So how did that come about? Because that was really your, from a product standpoint, that was your uh, main entree into doing that business. Why don't you talk about that a little bit, and where did that idea come from? How did you come up with that
sure.
concept?
Sure. So, yeah, this is, I guess, 5 or 6 years ago at this point. I was working in the consulting side still, and it was kind of at that point in my career I wanted to take a swing towards building an actual product, right? So, from when you're consulting, you're working very close with founders who are really passionate about these problems, and me being kind of the product component of that, I didn't have that domain expertise to really help solve the problem. So for me, I knew that next step, as much as I loved doing that, the next step was find something that I could really own more than just from a project scenario. Meaning, a lot of the clients that I was working with, I'd work very close with them from idea stage to the MVP or the beta product. But in most cases, they were pre-funding or maybe raised the first round, or maybe we're self-funding. But once we got to that first milestone, they had 3 to 6 months of investigation to keep pulling back the layers and see if there was a business there. So
Right.
most of my engagements it was kind of short, and I didn't get to see it through. So I knew that I wanted to take ownership and solve a problem of my own. Um, at the same time as I started looking in different industries that I had interest in, at that exact time, my wife and I were renting an apartment in O'Fallon, Missouri, and we had a pretty poor experience with the property manager at the time. It was kind of the runaround of phone calls falling through the cracks, text messages, us connecting with the property manager, then trying to get in touch with the vendor. At the time, we had about 6 inches of water in the basement of our storage room, and they thought it got fixed. It never did. It was kind of just a frustrating time, and it just opened my eyes to open up the computer and start researching of how do people that live in an apartment communicate with the property manager. There's got to be a better way to make sure that everyone's in the loop. And as I looked at the industry, there's there was kind of a newer wave of technology companies that weren't legacy companies. They were built within the last 5 to 10 years, but they were very
Yeah.
accounting heavy. And it was very clear to me that there was an opportunity to really look at the resident or the renter or as a consumer. And those expectations of consumers have really changed over the past 10 or so years. So the idea of a mobile first experience when you're a renter somewhere was really interesting to me. Um, so I started talking to property managers that I either knew or got connected to, talked to really everyone in the industry that I could find to see if I was seeing a mirage or if there was actually something here. And the idea of a mobile first communication and engagement platform for property managers to interact with their tenants was something that was like, yeah, that's, we need that. If you had that, I would use it, because right now I'm texting or emailing or calling. So I at that point, um, me being a product strategist, I needed kind of the yin yang to that, which is the engineer. So I started researching and talking with my friends and hunted very fiercely until I found Jimmy Lean, who ended up becoming my co-founder for TenantLoop. And we hit it off. He was leading an engineering team at the time and started building the MVP during his spare time. And we really just started going from there. And he had owned a property or two in the past. He had been in the real estate world as well. So we kind of had that alignment there. And it was just put your heads down and start building, and then get it in front of the
Yeah.
potential users as fast as we could. So
Yeah, you were doing a lot of, like I said, you started off with when you had Embassy, you were helping other people kind of solve their problems, in terms of helping them define their market and helping them with their businesses. And so then you found a pain point that you and your wife were experiencing and said, hey, I think we can do something to improve that situation. So that's cool. So how did you come up with the name? Where'd the name TenantLoop come from?
yeah, so it's not too exciting of a story aside from one of my hobbies is collecting domain names that I'll probably never use. As most entrepreneurs can probably relate, one of my favorite things is finding a catchy phrase or name, whether it's .com or .co or .io, the few kind of different domain extensions that I like. I've always collected them, and I also know a handful of tools that if you have your few keywords, really they'll help you find a .com available or whatever the extension is. And it was really as simple as that. Me just looking through, I did not have the domain name prior, but it was kind of using the same process. I like the word loop, that's cool, and tenant, renter, resident, all the different buzzwords, and the .com was available, and we did some trademark research, and it was enough. Or no red flags to say don't use this name, and we just rolled with it. So it wasn't too much deeper than that. But I have an embarrassing collection of unused .coms and .cos that one day I might use, but it's just
Yeah, I think a lot of entrepreneurs spend a lot of their spare time on GoDaddy or whatever, just dreaming up different domain names, and
it's a
it's kind of a, yeah, it is. It is. So this is the first time I've actually had to. I do the same type of deal all the time. So got a few extra minutes before I go to bed. I'm like on GoDaddy. I'm just looking up different domains, and that's cool. Well, so let's talk a little bit. How did you get the funding for TenantLoop? You want to talk about how did you fund this thing to get it started?
Yeah, so at the idea stage, it was self-funded, which was really just using money that I made consulting. It was very, very bootstrapped, to where in some cases it was a cash and equity deal for helping for getting other engineers to help build it. In some cases, it was friends helping out for little to no cost, et cetera. And that's kind of what it normally takes early on when you're at that idea stage. You hopefully have some friends that can help or are flexible. But we knew that obviously that wouldn't last for too long unless we were building a company that got to revenue very quick, or the founder was in a position to self-fund it. So we had about 3 or 4 months while we were building the MVP that I was self-funding. And once it got maybe a month or so in is when I started talking with people in my network and my network's network, et cetera, of people specifically in either real estate or just tech in general. And it's really just kind of putting in the time and grinding away to meet with people and trying to find people that either believe in you as the founder or believe in the problem that you're going after. And at that stage, that's really all the assurance you can get. Most of the investors coming in at that point. For us, it was all angels. We didn't have any institutional funding. We'd raised a few $100,000 for TenantLoop, so it was not a huge monster round, but it was enough to de-risk 9 to 12 months of runway for us, so that really I could focus on building the product and customers. And that's the normal founder dilemma, is you spend a lot of time fundraising. So I just started kind of grinding away, and like I said, going through the networks. In some cases, I was targeting people I didn't know, but I knew that were interested in tech or real estate. So some of them were from St. Louis. A few of our investors were from the East Coast, that were people that I just found during research, started with a cold email, built a relationship, and eventually they came in to invest in as well. And I think that journey was probably one of the most rewarding but most difficult things to do, specifically as a first time product founder that doesn't really have a track record yet. It's putting the time in, and once you're meeting investors, for me, the thing that worked was making sure that they were updated as we progressed. So just because they weren't writing a check initially to come in a lot of cases, it was building that relationship and that trust over the next 3 to 6 months, in some cases, of just ultimately proving that you do what you say you're going to do. Is pretty much the most blunt way that I view that. Is if someone doesn't know you, a lot of people can do the sales side, but they want to know if they're going to invest in a doer that's going to find a business if there's one there. And that was kind of the strategy that I took with it. But a very, very tough process. But fortunately, we had some really great true value add investors that were involved, either giving feedback or making connections, that I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, and in your case, and you can kind of refresh my memory in terms of how things got to Buildium, because I don't even know, were you actually acquiring customers prior to the acquisition, or how did the Buildium thing come about? Because they ended up acquiring you and your team and bringing everybody on over to them. And Buildium, if you don't know, I mean, it's a sizable company out of Boston. Maybe you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So as far as the stage of the company goes, we had a few hundred users using the beta product. We were pre-revenue. So we were a few months away from getting to a point where we could exit the true beta and start charging. But the unique thing about what we were building is that, since we laid on top of traditional property management software, ultimately meaning the accounting software that property managers accept payments on and send that money along to the owners, et cetera, we knew that we were filling one part of this very large process. So we had to decide, do we build a product that's very easy to integrate with and every true property management software company wants to integrate with, or do we align ourselves with one of the larger companies and see where it goes? And those were kind of the two different routes to take. And Buildium had been on our radar pretty early. There were a few different reasons that they were on my radar. I liked the company. I liked the messaging. I knew they hadn't really played a mobile strategy too heavy yet, so I knew that we would kind of align with that piece. And I had reached out to Michael, the founder and CEO, at one point, just for an intro, just to get an idea, if anything else, just from a mentorship perspective of someone being in that industry, knowing that we were not directly competing with them today. And we had a few great conversations, built a relationship over the next few months. I flew out to Boston a few times to meet with them. And a little background on Buildium is, at the time, they were a privately held company, probably in the top 3 property management software players.
Yeah,
right. 2 million tenants on the platform, so very sizable. Primarily small to medium-sized landlords that were using, but
were they not at the time? Was Buildium not managing the relationship in terms of, all right, my hot water heater's out? They weren't managing that process, because you were really a point solution to, if I got something broken in my apartment, to communicate back to the landlord and to get the thing fixed. Were they not doing that, but you were just doing it all on mobile, which I don't think they had a mobile or a great mobile experience maybe at the time.
Yeah, you're spot on. So at the time, the way the industry was solving it, and this wasn't unique to Buildium, quite a few of their direct competitors, there were basic solutions in place, whether it was some sort of an SMS campaign or emails that got integrated to Buildium. But as far as a true, very powerful mobile messaging experience that kind of aligned with the vision of knowing that it's not always one-to-one, right? There's the property manager, the maintenance person, the tenant. There may be another tenant on the same lease that needs to get notified that someone's coming to the property and scheduling the time and sharing the photos. That piece was happening for the most part. It aligned with the research TenantLoop did. Is a lot of property managers were texting on their own devices, which is great because it was mobile, but all of those records were not really living on your system of record. If you lost an employee, all of those records, they were probably on that person's own device. So if you lost a leasing agent, they were probably texting the tenant on their own device, and nothing was stored kind of in the cloud. Ultimately, the same thing that Microsoft Teams and Slack have done for horizontal industries. We knew that these communication conversations were more than just one-to-one text. There were all these moving parts. That's why we knew there was something that was a little bit something that we could build a moat around if we solved really well. And that's kind of how we aligned ourselves with Buildium, was that they had a mobile app at the time. Our now good friend Andrew was the one and only person in their mobile division. So Buildium saw this as an opportunity, as one, to bring on a team that really became their bet on mobile as a feature and value add and differentiator. And two, it's leveraging everything that we had learned in the past few years prior to that about mobile communication in that space and bringing that to the table. So that's kind of why it aligned with where they were going as a company. And it just, the pieces all met, and neither side saw red flags, and it was very smooth. And I had to make the decision on that versus raising more money and staying independent. And it just,
you actually exited fairly early, because that time from when Jimmy came on board, your first employee, I guess, till actually exiting to Buildium, how long was that? That wasn't that long, really.
Yes, it was. So Jimmy started kind of as a contractor mid 2015, came on full time as co-founder, et cetera, at the top of 2016, and we were acquired in 13 months later. So it's about a year and a half in, and that was 100%. It was. We could have probably either raised a full seed round and took it for a ride further. I think some of the things we were going after, they didn't, they could still be solved today in certain ways. But for the founder, the toughest thing in the pit of your stomach, it's, if you're going to go raise a round again, or if it's your own money, I view that as the same. It's just the capital side of it. Do you believe that you can be 10 times further in the next 12 to 18 months? And if you don't firmly believe that, then it's probably a good time to be open to other opportunities. And that was the pit of my stomach. Was I had the vision to see the A to Z and knew that it could change an industry of how residents communicate with their property manager. But the next steps, I knew we had some major hurdles once revenue was a factor. I knew that was going to be a hurdle. I knew that integrating with other accounting software, I knew that we were getting ready to take on the waves, which I think we could have done. But again, it's the gut of the founder and co-founders that you kind of have to go with, and no regrets kind of a thing. And it's all about taking those risks and rewards as a founder. And that's kind of the context of that.
Yeah, and when you did go over to, when you guys were acquired by Buildium, I mean, you had a core team of folks, and my understanding is you basically became the mobile development group in a lot of ways for elements of Buildium, right?
Yeah, so the four of us that were full-time on TenantLoop, so it was a pretty small team, close team, but we were four of us full-time. We had a few contractors that contributed a lot, but the four of us we all joined Buildium at the same time. So there were five of us kind of the day we started, with the one person, Andrew, that was already on their team. And by the end, towards the end of last year, that team, we grew to 16 people or so. So it quadrupled in size over the last 3 years since we joined, which was great. And I mean, we launched two very, very large applications, award-winning. I think they're at 4.8 in the app stores. So we had a lot of things to be grateful for. That a lot of those things that we wanted to go after, obviously we were a small part of that piece, but the early kind of vision around why mobile was important, that we're grateful to have played a role in that, because there's no guarantees, right? Adoption in any industry, specifically real estate, is always going to be tricky. So the company had to take risks with us building that. But yeah, that was a big piece. And Jimmy ended up he had we both since left the company, but Jimmy had, I think, almost the most direct reports on the engineering team at the time. And then I was with mobile, and for the second half of my tenure there, I led the user experience and design team that spanned beyond mobile and was the rest, which was a team of 10 or so at the largest, I believe, 9 or 10. And so we tried to leave our mark and just contribute really in any way you can when you join another company like that.
That's really cool. And you're still a young guy. You got a lot of years of this to go yet. So you have many, and you're doing that now. You've made a decision to leave on your own. I guess maybe you left. Were you left after Buildium has since been acquired by RealPage, which is even a much larger company. And
right.
And so I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about and you don't have to give away any secrets, but I know you're itching to get your next gig up, and I think you're already in the process of your next venture, I think.
Yeah, so kind of transition. Me being an entrepreneur all of my life, joining Buildium was the first W-2 job I've ever had, and I'm mid-30s at this point. So that was kind of just an interesting chapter of life. But for my family specifically, it was great. My wife and I had some actual stability. We had our first child. We got a house. All that good stuff that's normally harder when you're a founder. That's the last 3 years was kind of a transition period for us to do that, to kind of take on that part of life. But my entrepreneur itch has kind of been itching the past year or so. And the CEO of Buildium and the head of product that I reported to, everyone knew that I was itching. So we looked for ways for me to add value in different ways to Buildium, which I kind of bounced around teams and did. But we all knew the end goal was that I wanted to take another swing, and I'll keep swinging throughout my entire career. But the segue was that Buildium was acquired by RealPage, as you said, a public company, in December of this past year, which was a very big move in the industry. They're just a monster company. They have a very large suite of products, very good for Buildium to have those resources and to keep growing. I think that's great, but it was a very good time for me to part ways and hop back into the startup world and kind of get back, honestly, at the pace and kind of the pace and uncertainty that I'm comfortable with in the startup world. Yeah. I missed that. So that was January, February was my transition period. And since then, I've taken a look at a few different opportunities and problems that have been kind of on my mind, and some new ones that I have just taken a few months off to peel back the layers on and to decide what the next swing is. I haven't been in a rush, but we're early stage at this point, building prototypes and all that good stuff to get in front of potential customers, doing some idea validation with potential users. And that's normally Facebook, email, Instagram campaigns to see who will sign up for the waiting list, and kind of the growth hacky stuff that I used to do for my clients. That's always something that I think's good just to know if the problem you're looking at solving resonates with people that don't know you, right? And don't know anything about you. If they see the ad or if they see the survey, and that you get in front of them somehow, just to see if they resonate with it, what their feedback is, what the challenges might be. And that's always a really fun process, is that it's not gospel, because when you're pre-product and you're pre-revenue, there's still a lot of uncertainty, but it does help you understand how reachable the market might be and how they might view it. And my goal with those is make it feel like there's a product behind that sign up button, more than the weekend landing page, but really make it feel like there's a product there, and see where it goes. And that's what I have put some time into.
Yeah, well, that's cool. So very exciting. Well, really appreciate you taking the time. I know I don't want to take up your whole morning here, but really appreciate it, Jeff. You've been with OPO from the beginning and the past 5 years, and really excited to see what you do over the next 5 years. So that's kind of going to be exciting to see you continue to grow, and whatever this new thing you're doing, I'm real excited to see where you go with it. So congratulations, and thanks for chatting today.
Yeah, thank you as well. It's definitely a pleasure from my end. OPO has been just an anchor point for me as an entrepreneur, specifically in the Midwest.
Yeah.
I'd always worked from home. I had a few minor office spaces, but I hadn't been part of a community. And Randy, you put me up in one of your offices in the annex building that didn't have a name at the time, but that was me getting connected to you before the renovation had started on the main building. It was like, hey, if you're starting something new, you work with us to get going, which I'm forever grateful for. But yeah, OPO's been a significant part of that. I've met some really good people through it, and two of the other team members that came on with TenantLoop. Those intros probably wouldn't have happened without OPO. So I think that's what that community is all about, is what happens when you have that central meeting place and kind of rub elbows with other people. And I've gotten new coworkers, investors, and a lot of friends out of the community. So
Yeah, and you definitely were a big part of us starting OPO, and also with BoardPack, you helped out with a lot of that stuff too.
Yeah.
So we very much appreciate it. All right, cool. Well, we're going to end it here. So you were the
Great.
first of our chats, and look forward to many more over many years to come. So great job.
Great.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. Good talking to you.
Take care.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.